Live from New York City, it's the Dream Shakerz podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Odom, alongside my co-host,
George Nunez.
and we're back with episode 33. Today, we have Hector Castillo Carvajal, an entrepreneur from the Bronx who has created an e-commerce coffee company that's focused on providing a stellar product that's sustainably and ethically sourced. Let's give a warm welcome to Hector.
That's real. That's real. I do this because it's near and dear to me. And I want to take a moment to pay homage, to pay tribute to the Bronx. So can we just take a moment of silence and just throw the X up one time for the best borough, New York City, you know what I'm saying? Can we do that? All right, perfect, brother. Now, let's get into it because we know that you have humble beginnings, but the situation of the matter is the audience doesn't know this, right? So how was it growing up in DR, then switching lanes and growing up in the X, specifically Uptown Gun Hill? Like, how was that whole situation? And also, did you grow up near the 2 line or near the 5 line? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, for me, I would say it was an interesting transition. Of course, I think as an immigrant, you come here and you have the language barrier, the culture, the everything, right? It's a culture shock that comes in many combinations, right? Like culture encompasses so many different things, right? Between the language, the economic, the education, the societal things. So it was definitely tough, but I think that I was very fortunate that I got here at a young age. So I got here when I was 8 years old from the Dominican Republic, and it was difficult, but it wasn't that difficult for me to adapt the language and adjust, right? Because when you're a child, you easily conform or you adjust, right? It's like Bruce Lee. You're like water. You could just walk up into whatever cup and just adjust. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where it was definitely a tough process, because it's tough for every immigrant to leave their home, their comfort and what they know, and then move somewhere else and adapt to whatever world is depicted for them. But I would say over time, though, I overcame all the challenges and learned the language barriers, or overcame the language barriers, and assimilated myself to what society is here. But I actually grew up on Fordham in the Bronx, and I would say in like 2014, I moved to like the Gun Hill area more or less, and then I started living here. I went to high school right here, Christopher Columbus. Then I went to CUNY in Manhattan, studying Charles Gumman Community College. So that commute is no joke on the 2 line. You already know, man. That you see things that you would never see anywhere else, man. Like you will die blind if you don't die seeing a train ride of the 2 train. So it's one of those things. But it was it was challenging in its way. But I would say it's actually what shaped me. I think that everybody's journey is different, and given that I'm an immigrant, that I came here young and that I got to adapt to what Fordham is and then Gun Hill, and, get to read some books and understand the educational aspect, and then get some street in me, because you got to learn how to survive in these streets. It hits you with 2 different types of points of life where you get to approach things in many ways. Sometimes you might use things that you learn on the street for a business move, but you never looked at it like that. You know what I mean? So it's always about, the challenges that you overcame and how you use that to your advantage, I would say,
And a follow-up to that, what does it mean to be from the Bronx to you? And what does it mean to be an Afro-Latino?
Being from the Bronx, man, it could mean so many things, because you could ask anybody and it's different for every single person. Every block is different. Everybody's culture is different. Everybody's family is on a different type of time. But for me, I would say it's a place where I think as a male, in a way, like you gotta have tough skin. You grow up in an environment that's very hostile. You gotta learn how to survive. Like they don't call it the concrete jungle for nothing. You really gotta learn how to survive. It's like being Tarzan, but in the city. And you gotta know how to move through what block at what time and things like that, right? But I think that it's places like New York that brew up people who are going to be change makers, people who persevere things that they get to a certain level in their life and things don't really face them, I would say, right? And I think I'm at a point where, because I'm from the Bronx and all of these things, it got to build this character within me, and a certain level of perseverance that I walk in the room and it's like, somebody saying no to me is like not that, I don't really get pressed by that. Like, homie, I heard no my whole life. It's okay. Some people break down over a no. I don't really look at it like that. Every no is an opportunity for the next yes. So it's all about keeping it forward. You know what I mean? So those are some of the things that I got from just living here. But at the same time, you get to really diversify what you experience as a Bronxite, right? There's all different kinds of cultures, all different kinds of food, music, and all these things. So I have friends from all over the world, and it really shows you how much of a melting pot it is. So you don't have to travel to the Middle East or to Asia to experience what their food is like or what their culture is like, because you have those people from there here. So it's a combination of the culture and growth and experience. So growing up in the Bronx for me, it was, the Mr. Softy coming up in the corner and you yelling to your mom, yo, let me get a dollar. You know what I mean? Like one of those things, to then taking the train downtown, you know what I mean? And going with your friends to Times Square. Meanwhile, you was cutting classes like you really shouldn't have. But it's like, those are the little things kids do here. Or PAL in the summertime with the basketball tournaments at the park. Like, it's just so much culture and so much community that you wouldn't really get it anywhere else. I would say the Bronx is one of those things where we're a staple. Like hip hop was invented here. Now hip hop is a worldwide staple, if not global, because we just might be in Mars. They might be in Mars bumping hip hop right now, right? But it's one of those things where it's a beautiful thing. As many negative connotations are on top of the Bronx, I think it's a beautiful thing to grow up here and to experience what we get to experience as fellow Bronxites. I don't think people get to experience what we experience because they're not from here. All they see is the bad headlines, and that's typically how it happens for a lot of places. You see the bad and not much of the good, but whatever it is, we're gonna keep on doing our thing here in the X. Yeah.
Given that broad set of experiences that you've been able to garner from the Bronx, garner from the borough, what initially sparked the passion in coffee, right? And roasted beans from your home country of DR?
Yeah, the thing of coffee started with one good cup of coffee, and I always mention this, that it typically happens like that for most people who are in the industry. Like it's like people in the music industry, like, oh, I heard this one song and I was inspired, or I heard this one album and I was just like, yeah, that's so dope, or I heard this one beat and it made me want to be a beat maker. Like I had one really good cup of coffee and somebody was kind of educating me on what the industry is, and it just sparked some sort of interest because I come from Dominican Republic, where we have a big agriculture culture, and it really reminded me back of where I'm from, like my grandfather's farm and things like that. And I was like, yo, this is crazy, because yeah, it's coffee, it's a different crop than what he used to do, but it's all kind of the same method, right? Like you farm, you plant it, you water it, you weed it, and you do the same process all over. You take care of it. So I just felt like I was back home, kind of like learning about it, and it sparked this interest that I kind of carried to the University of Rochester, because I transferred from CUNY to the University of Rochester. So I got my associates in liberal arts and sciences. Then I went up to the University of Rochester for business marketing. And in there, that's where I got to like hone in on it. And then I had a class project where I got to dive deeper into it. So, my professor allowed me to do a class project on this hypothetical coffee company that I was thinking about. And then in that class, I got to research more about it, learn more numbers, learn more figures, kind of understand who the key players in the coffee game is or are, how does trade happen, how does the game work. And given that I got to know so much about the industry, it was crazy because it just felt like a good idea. It was just like, yeah, that's crazy. Like I'm looking at all this information and I see like this gap, like I see a problem in the industry. And it's like, maybe it's not like there's nobody else doing it, but there's nobody like me doing it, right? There's nobody who talks like me, who walks like me, who projects themselves like me, right? There's nobody where I'm from doing this. Like, it's like it might be saturated somewhere else, but where I'm from, ain't nobody up on this, right? It's like one of those things where it's like, homie, what spot is that? Don't worry about it. It's like, don't worry about it, right? But it was one of those things where it just seemed like a good opportunity. It seemed like there was an inch for me in the industry. And coffee, last time back then, it was a $300 billion industry. I think now it's like $500 billion industry. And I was just like, yo, like, I don't even need the whole pie. I don't need half the pie. I don't need a quarter. I just need 1%. Like, if I was to look at it, I was like, yo, I just need 1% of that pie. If it's a $500 billion industry, I get 1%. That's $5 billion. That's it. Like, it's just like, we'll be all right. If a company in the Bronx is bringing in $5 billion in revenue, I think we'll be all right. And that's just 1%. right? Like I think people always look at the bigger picture, like, oh, I want the whole pie. It's like sometimes you could be the smallest player and make a big amount of something, right? So of course, if we could get the whole pie, great. But my mentality was like, yo, this is such a dope industry. I see an opportunity. I see myself within it, right? I'm also an entrepreneur. I've sold. I even sold candy on a train before. Like, bro, when you could think about it, like I date back entrepreneurship to my DR days, right? So for me, it was like, yo, this is an opportunity for me to do my own thing, for me to pursue business. I've always loved business. I always loved being an entrepreneur. I've always loved selling things. Like I get dopamine, bro. When I sell you this mug of coffee or this bag of coffee, every time it's just dopamine. Like it's a salesman thing. But it's that sense of achievement. You know what I mean? Like I came up with this product, I came up with this idea, and then you're willing to invest into this product or into this idea. So then that's the moment of dopamine, I would say. So, it all started one good cup of coffee, and then it just kind of went. It's like a snowball effect after that. Yeah.
I want to give a quick shout out to Hector Bonilla. I know he was telling me about you and raved about you so much that's a good friend of mine. We went to Eagle Academy together. I was a year above him at the time in high school up in the Bronx. So shout out to him and also shout out to Eagle Academy. But getting back to this, right? How did you come up with the name of the brand specifically, right? Because you could have mentioned anything, but you give credit to your grandpops all the time, and you shout them out. So, like, at what point did you realize you wanted to utilize him and kind of pay it forward? And what do you believe the core pillars of your brand stand for?
So on the face, it's called Don Carvajal Cafe because Carvajal is my grandfather. So it's like my maiden last name. So it's my mother's last name from her dad. For me, when I look at other brands, like I always saw these super corporate things, and it just felt like some of the brands I looked at, they just felt so artificial. It just felt like I'm trying to sell you something and get your money and be out, right? But I felt like giving something with a family touch to it, right? Like that family, that song, that sauce. Like it's not. People always think that my company is a family-owned company, but it's not. It's owned by me, which will be a family-owned and operated company when I have my own family, right? But people think that I inherited it from my grandfather and things like that, but that's kind of an organic image that people get, right? Because I put my grandfather's face on it, I put my grandfather's last name on it, because I felt like if I was to come up with a product that comes from agricultural beginnings, I wanted to put his face on it because that's what he did for a living. You know what I mean? His dad and his dad's dad, that's what they did. Like that's where they come from. And at some point I was born into that world, but then my family migrated here. So then that was my cap to the lifestyle, right? But for me, it was like, yo, how do I make this product seem authentic, right? How do I make this product seem like it's something legit, right? So let me put my grandfather's face and the name, because just because of who he was and what he did, you're gonna get the authenticity behind it. So it was like people always think that we've been doing this for generations and it's a family-owned business and it comes from DR to here, and it just happened organically like that, right? But I wanted people to get that sense of this is super organic, it's super natural, it's not artificial in the sense of the way it comes across, like the messaging and the messaging that you get, right? The perspective and the impression when you look at it, that's kind of what people got. So that's kind of what I was actually going for. That's what I was going for. So then I'm glad it worked out in that way. But it also felt good to honor him because he was such a stellar man in my life, right? He passed when I was very young. I don't quite remember him, but the stories that my family tells me kind of keeps his imagery vivid in my head. So that's kind of why I put him, and it just felt right. You know what I mean? It was like the right person. If I could put anybody in this world, like it would just be him. It would just be him. Yeah.
Given that authenticity, right, like that long lineage, was this the reason why you ultimately opted to go for the sustainably sourced beans, and why that ethical approach was so critical for you to get right with the brand?
I would say a lot of it. My brand is an extension of who I am. So my brand is definitely an extension of who I am. So a lot of the eco-friendly, ethically sourced things, it was stuff that I already believed in, right? So me as a consumer, I was just like, what am I supposed? What do I look for in a brand? Like I wish a brand was organic, natural, sustainable, eco-friendly, transparent. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna make a brand that embodies what I look for in one, right? Like it's like dating, like this is what I look for. So let me put these qualities into the next person or something, right? So when I created this brand, I was just like, whatever I look for on the shelf, it's like when people are at the supermarket, they're like dating brands. Like you're like looking at one, you're reading the back, like it's like Tinder, right? Like you swipe left, no, I don't want that pasta. Swipe right, I think this one's good, right? This is non-GMO, it's gluten-free. I like that pasta. The other one, you're like, nah, this one's not USD organic. That's a dub to the left, right? So when you're at the supermarket shelf, you're always swiping left or right between brands. And when I created mine, it was that sense of like, what can I put in a brand that when people are shopping and dating different products, what makes mine stand out? So mine is organic, it's craft brown, it just seems very artisanal, and that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted the first impression to be. So that's like you going out to a gala and dressing up and looking really nice. It's when you design a product behind the physical and also the branding, you want to be able to give off a message without them even picking it up. So when I designed the brand, it was all of these things, and it was just kind of an extension of what I believe in. And then at the same time, the research that I was doing backed up what I believed in. So it was just like, this is what I believe in, and then the numbers behind the research just backed up what I was going for. So there was a trend, and there still is a trend of the things that I'm promoting and the things that we are, right? I think brands have a hard time adjusting to being eco-friendly and ethically sourced practices because they were built 100 years ago. 100 years ago, nobody cared about that stuff, but now they do. So now imagine raising 100 years of that and then transforming to what it is now. I don't think it's hard for a brand to begin in these new values of ethics and then move forward, because they don't have to adjust anything. They might have to adjust a few things later, but now we're in a new age, right? It's not like we're a company that's been around for 100 years and we had to change people's mentalities or change the branding behind it or our values, because the way you source and you produce and the way you distribute it's all contingent on that, right? How eco-friendly are you? How considerate are you of the different ways? When it comes to your eco emissions and things like that, like how do these things play out? Like Amazon went from gas powered delivery trucks to electricity. They never had delivery trucks. That was a new thing that they dropped, but then they made this new climate change impact that they want to do, and they switched to all electric vehicles now, right? So state by state, they're swapping all of them out from these gas cargo vans to electric. So that's like a company they haven't been around for 100 years. So they didn't have ships and boats and trucks that were like all gas. They just got into the delivery market, but now they're changing rapidly, right? So it's all about keeping up with the times and innovating at the same time.
They say if you put in the work, eventually you'll get noticed.
Right.
And you've been noticed by Fresh Direct, got the head nod from John Henry, Bronx 12, Bronx Net. You've been all over the place. And congrats, by the way. But even going back to the Fresh Direct experience, what were some of the benefits and challenges that came from working with the online grocer, right? And also, what was that feeling like when you were like, all right, cool, I'm here. I'm finally being recognized by the John Henrys of the world, Bronx Net, Bronx 12. What was that feeling like?
Yeah, I'll start with this. People always ask me, yo, how do I get onto the Mundo? Yo, how do I get on News 12? And how do I get on these platforms? And I tell people, like, you know what? You don't even look for them. You don't even go for them. You don't hit them up. You just do what you do. You just hustle. You just grind. And you just get to it and forget about the world. And the world is gonna see that. Like if you yell at them, they're gonna look at you like, okay, I heard you. But if you just do your own thing and you banging your own noise because you're working hard over here, they're gonna hear that noise, right? They rather pay attention to the noise that you building while you're working than the noise you're making to get attention. It's two different kinds of noises, right? So for me, like honestly, like people always ask me, yo, how could I get on this? How can I promote my product this way? And it's like, yo, just do what you do, just hustle, just grind, and just do your thing. I would say for me, growth is crazy, man. Like we're growing, and like I run my business between my crib an office in the South Bronx, a roasting space in Queens, and me going back and forth to warehouses in New Jersey. So I'm like all over the place. A challenge I'm having is growth. Sometimes you're growing so fast, it's really hard to adjust. That's something that's a challenge for me, I would say. Sometimes the operations, the growth, having a customer or a client like Fresh Direct is a beautiful step, because for me it was like, wow, like, okay, got their first order, got it, fulfilled it, and then when they jump from this order volume to this order volume, that just is like, wow, like people really reciprocated to that product being on their platform. It's like a moment of growth, like, oh wow, like I just leveled up. Like when you get a big client like that, it's like, yo, like I really made it to this. It's all about doing your due diligence and prepping yourself. So it's always like people look at me like, yo, that's crazy. How do I get on Fresh Direct? And it's like, damn, like that's something I thought about 2 years ago, and like now I'm here. And it just keep on doing your thing, just keep on hustling, man. But the challenge, yeah, it's pretty much it. That's just managing sometimes people, managing growth. We have, as a small business owner, you have little to no capital. Like you bootstrap it. You do this with your credit cards or with your savings, and that's it. Like you ain't got no fancy uncles, mommy and daddy money, unless you do, congrats. But most of us don't have that. You know what I mean? So you bootstrap the whole thing, and a lot of it is funding, a lot of it is experience. Like a lot of the things that you're doing, you're doing it for the first time. So it's either you aim and you shoot, and it's either you hit the target or you don't. And if you don't hit it, you might lose some money. If you hit it, you might make some money. But that's what it is. It's a learning process. It's a beautiful one. And one day, man, if any entrepreneurs are listening and it's like, yo, these challenges and whatnot, but one day it's gonna all be worth it. That's kind of what I tell myself. Like people ask me, like, you ever think about quitting? And it's like, yeah, I don't even think about it. Like, homie, I just pull through. Like I just do it, bro. I Nike it. I just do it. Like it's just the commitment at this point. Like you didn't got so far to ever go back. So it's all about just keeping it pushing and moving forward.
That theme of bootstrapping and getting it how you can, it it must have made the act of raising over $50,000 on a platform like Kickstarter all the more fulfilling, right? So first and foremost, what will that latest raise of capital allow you to do for the company? And then why did you decide to go forward with the physical retail presence, given the fact that you were already having this meaningful growth with the e-commerce sales? And then why decide Hunts Point, right? Like why that neighborhood in particular? It's a bunch of interesting decisions you made, and we wanted to know what was some of the thought process behind them.
Yeah. I would say the 60K will serve to build a space, right? My mentality is this: right now, I rent a space in Queens to roast my coffee, and I only roast there because I rent there, right? There's no free roasting going on, right? There's also warehousing going on in New Jersey, where we go pick up the green raw materials from, and then I operate out of the Bronx. So for me, in a day-to-day, I can probably go to 2 states and 3 to 4 boroughs. On top of that, I need, at this point, I've outgrown a lot of the spaces that I'm in, and I just need a space for me to operate on my own. So for me, it's like I was already going to build a production space, a roasting space, a space to carry out operations. And it was just like, I've always had the mentality of how can I make one thing multi-purpose? Like my cell phone is personal and business. This laptop is personal and business, right? My car, it's personal and business. So it's multi-use. It has 2 purposes, right? So for me, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna get the space regardless. I'm growing into it. I'm gonna pay rent there. I'm gonna pay light. I'm gonna pay water. You know what? I might as well bring in 2 streams of revenues, boom, and start building a physical presence in terms of cafes, because we do coffee. Now, coffee is highly sold at coffee shops. So how do we create a space where we can bring in people, create a flagship to build a brand, have guests, have events, whatever it is, and at the same time carry out operations? So it was like, we're gonna do roasting in the back. We're gonna take care of wholesale, retail, and all of these things. And then in the front, we could build the brand as a flagship and things like that. You want to try our coffee? Well, actually come to the coffee shop. You want to see how we roast our coffee? We do weekly roasting tours where we show you how we actually do this and why we're different. So it was one of those things where we wanted to actually interact. Like e-commerce is beautiful, but we wanted to put a human aspect to it. Come through, come chill with us, come sip with us, come roast with us, and then kind of bridge that gap, because virtual can only go but so far. But once you make a human connection to it, once you show people and educate them on the process, now it's a different experience. It's not a 2 taps on your phone. It's you seeing it with your 2 eyes. So that was kind of the thought process behind it. But it was mainly like, I'm already going to have the space. I'm already growing into it. Why not have both in one? And then later we could diversify. And then Hunts Point, I would say, because we've already actually been there. Like I launched the company in April 2019. I started it in Rochester. Once I came down that summer, I was based in Hunts Point. So I've been in Hunts Point for over 2 years. So it's not nothing new for me. I've been in Hunts Point for over 2 years. In April 2022, we'll make 3 years. And for me, I was already in the community. I'm literally going to be a block away from where I'm from. I'm currently based in an incubator space where I do like my office work and things like that there. But I'm literally a block away from where I'm currently at. So it's nothing new for me. But I think Hunts Point is one of those communities that's it's definitely going to change in the long run. There's a lot of developments going on. I think there's a lot of economic development projects that are going to happen throughout the next few years. And I think it's, it's growing. And I want to be a part of the community. I think a lot of people leave the community and go somewhere else. But for me, it was just like, let me just build here. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, me opening up a coffee shop and a roasting space and stuff like that, like we're going to need employees. We're going to provide opportunities. So for me to go anywhere else, I'd rather do it there. And on top of that, I felt like anywhere else where I would have went, I would have kind of followed somebody else's footsteps. But me doing it in the Bronx, will be the first public roasting room. Like you could look around for any roasting room. I haven't found one. So we'll be the only roasting room. And for me, it'll allow me to kind of build that sense of community when it comes to coffee. And just do my thing. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I knocked on a lot of doors growing up in the company and nobody opened one. So for me, it was just like, how do I just do my own thing? I'm just in my own corner doing my own thing. And if you want to rock with us, you rock with us. If you don't, you don't. Like, but I'm just big on just doing my own thing. Like I'm just, I think Hunts Point, the Bronx, like nobody's doing what I'm doing here. And I just want to keep it like that. Like I just want to be in my own wave. And I hope to inspire other people to do it. So then people want to come through, start doing the thing, is all love. But I love just doing my own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think for me, it motivated me to get so many no's and so many doors shut in my face. And it was just like, all right, bet, cool. Let's get it on and popping. And that's kind of what grew up in the Bronx. Like everybody's like, don't go to the Bronx. And it's like, nah, I'm really going to the Bronx.
You touched a bit on the roasting process and having those events to involve the community so that they understand what that process is like. Could you touch a bit about it? Or could you touch more on it and like how are the flavors added to the coffee beans, but more specifically, like the tastings of it and looking at like how or where it's largely determined by how the coffee beans are grown. We wanted to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So the space, I would say, in terms of like the coffee, we sell like single origin beans, so we don't add any flavoring or anything like that. Like it's just the original product itself. It's from original form from the farm. The coffee is grown in many different regions throughout the world. The biggest producer is Brazil, and then kind of one of the most known coffee is Colombian, and then Ethiopian, in my opinion. Right now, I would say my mission is to enlighten the Dominican coffee, right? I think that it doesn't receive enough recognition. And I think a lot of farmers shied away from it because of where the industry was going in terms of monetary incentives. But coffee's grown, in many different parts of the world. It was the last myth, I would say, the legend is that it was discovered in Ethiopia by a guy named Kaudi. He was a goat herder, so it's pretty dope. It goes back to Mother Africa as well. And then it's produced in all of these countries. Then it's processed and milled and dried and all these things. Then it's shipped here, arrives in like places like New Jersey or Miami, one of the main ports of each coast. And then it's brought over. It's a green thing. It's a green seed. And then we put it into a roaster where we roast it to a certain degree. It has different profiles between airflow, temperature, gas, and all these things. And then it comes out nice and brown, nice and brown. So in person, it'll be easier to explain it because you can see it. But it's an interesting process all around. Yeah.
So, fun question. How many cups you drink a day?
Honestly, in an office day, I drink 4. In my house, like when I'm working from home, like 1 to 2. So if I'm in the office and people are brewing up, I just be sipping and typing, sipping and typing. If I'm home, I just drink like 1 or 2. Yeah.
By the way, I kept it under wraps, so I'm actually bringing it up on the podcast. The cold brew drink was amazing. I got a chance to have it. I mean, I appreciate it. Definitely will be buying more. I need to restock. So yeah, appreciate you on that.
Now you already know, man. It's only the best thing in the face of the earth.
This is something that you've highlighted throughout the interview today, but the Afro Latino connection all throughout, right? So, how do you feel the state of Black and Latinx entrepreneurship is developing in the Bronx, and where do you see this space heading long term?
Yeah, I think we're in a different age now. I was watching this documentary, and then it was actually talking about how entrepreneurship has developed for centuries, and how popular the word used to be, and how it has been growing. Now it's thrown around like the word "I love you." Like it's like so common. Everybody's an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to be one. Everybody talks about it on social. Nobody wants to work a 9 to 5 no more. Everybody wants to work less, make more money. And I think that there's a big misconception about what being an entrepreneur is. You know what I mean? Like my friend tagged me in something, and he said it's an entrepreneur is a person who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. It's like you just get it done, you figure it out, and you're always actively doing things to get to the next level. But I would say right now we're in an age where people can meet an entrepreneur like myself. Like I've seen other entrepreneurs and I follow their journey. I read their books. I saw their interviews and their podcast. And then it gave me an insight into what their lifestyle was. And it was just like, is that something that I want for myself? You know what I mean? Am I about that life when it comes to taking these risks and going to the next level or risking it all? But I think we're living in a beautiful time because people get to meet other people who do what they do. Like I had the pleasure of meeting John Henry at a Square and MasterCard event, and then from there we actually became good friends. And then he mentored me for a little while, and it was that sense of community where like, wow, like you already do this, you already did this. How can I learn from you? How can I save myself time, mistakes, money? And just go from there. So I think we're in a different age where we can follow, we can learn, we can listen to people. We're living in the age of technology and information. Like people always ask me questions and I'm just like, yo, did you Google that before you asked me? You could have found it on Google because that's how I found it. So like our parents never had Google. They never had a computer in their hands. So it's that sense of like, how do we take advantage of the resources that we have? And I think that's what entrepreneurs have nowadays. Or you want to know how much an industry produces in a year, look up whatever industry, like makeup, hair, coffee, anything, sneaker market, right? Like there's all these little industries, but there's so much information online that you can use to tap into your dream. People always tell me, do you think this is a good idea? It's like, I can't tell you if it is or not, but you can Google numbers and figures and industry reports and understand if it is or not. Oh, I can't find nothing on it. Maybe it is a good idea because it doesn't exist. Or maybe somebody thought about it, but it just never worked out for them. So you never heard of it. But I think we're in a good age where people can access all of these tools and informations and resources and people. But sometimes I think there's also a misconception about being an entrepreneur. Sometimes I look at my friends and I'm like, I wish I had a 9 to 5, right? Like, wow, you work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then you have weekends to yourself? No, get out. Like I don't have weekends to myself most of the time, right? So it's like I'm always working, I'm always on the hustle. And sometimes people, are you willing to sacrifice your weekends? Are you willing to sacrifice not having vacation for the next 3 years? Because it's just growth happens. And sometimes people look at me like, oh man, you should take a break more often. It's like, honestly, if I could, I would, but the hustle is real. And there's certain things that you do in your company that it's just you who gets to do it. So, it's one of those things where I think we're at a good time. I think there's a lot of resources. I think there's also a misconception about what entrepreneurship is, but it's all about finding what's right for you and seeing if it's a good fit.
In this last statement, you were talking about it a lot in terms of the hustle, the grind.
Yeah.
Talk about that, because a lot of people don't really know what it takes, to your point, to be an entrepreneur. But I'll take it a step further. A lot of people don't really understand the difference or what differentiates a founder from a CEO. So like talk about it, because that's just night and day. Like, you know, a founder, you're you're literally grinding, you know, head to the desk, like you're just going and getting after it. I like to say you're getting it out the mud.
Right.
But as CEO, you're playing more the politics. So talk about that and how you have to switch in between hats.
Yeah, you were talking and you gave me a good example. I'm not a mother and I could never experience what a mother experiences through pregnancy, but I would say a founder is the one who deals with the pregnancy, and then the CEO might be like the stepmother who didn't have to deal with the complications and the labor and all these things, right? Like you ain't have to deal with the pain, but you gotta raise the child. But a founder, is the one who carries the pain, carries the baby 9 months, goes through labor, carries all the pains, all the complications, and then you raise the child, right? So it's one of those things where, as a founder, you come up with the idea, you make it happen, you bring it to life, and then you run it at the same time. So you founded it, you made it happen, and then you're running it at the same time. But given that you're the founder, you're the one who has to raise the capital or do everything. So you create the product, you sell the product, you fulfill the product, you invoice it, you deliver it, all of these things. As a CEO, you probably came in later. Like Jeff Bezos started his company in the 90s, and he just gave up the CEO seat. So now there's a CEO running it, but Bezos was the founder and CEO for X amount of years. But now that CEO is walking into a company that produces billions, if not trillions. And it's all well established. He's making a very good salary, and somebody who's walking into a prepared company, something that's established, very well organized and ready to go, opposed to somebody who starts something from scratch and they have to do everything, to make sure it runs successfully, and they have to fulfill all of these daily tasks.
Today, you've provided an immense amount of knowledge and insight on a broad set of topics. And we have another question for you, the final question for you. So here on Dream Shakers, we're all about paying it forward, about giving back, and we're about ensuring our audience has the core components to go ahead and craft journeys for themselves. So if you were thinking back to your younger self, right, what would be 3 pieces of advice you would give young Hector?
3 pieces of advice. That's very good. Very good. I appreciate my journey a lot. I appreciate every piece about my journey because I think with experience and mistakes, you get to learn and then grow from there. But I would say, oh man, I love my organic journey, so I really wouldn't change a lot. But advice wise, I would say just stay open minded. Always look for a solid team. Like I think that given that I had a team that were very solid and very supportive, and sometimes I think that when things get rough, it's hard for you to see things because not everybody's the same. So, appreciating the team, looking for people who really understand and support the vision, listening to yourself. You got to trust your intuition. Like your intuition could never fail. Like you might be like, I don't know. You might be second guessing a decision. Like, nah, trust yourself. Like you got to trust that feeling. Like if you feel like something's off, something's off. Like your mother, anytime your mother tells you something, just listen. It's like the same thing for yourself. Like when you feel like that about a decision or a person, always trust it. Because if you don't, then it's like, damn, I did have that intuition and then I didn't act on it, so now I got to deal with the repercussions or something. And then everything has its time. Take your time, don't rush, and just go with the flow. I think that there's no need to rush things or overcomplicate things or put yourself in a predicament where you're sacrificing something. I appreciate the journey and how it flowed, and it's just it's all about just going with the flow, going organic.
That's a wrap. Heck, we truly appreciate you for stopping by.
Yes,
We
sir.
appreciate the game that you gave us and how, this game could be beneficial to the whole audience that's listening and tuning in. We hope to invite you more on future episodes. But for now, this concludes the EP, and also we'd love for you to promote yourself, where people can follow you, where people could buy your product. I definitely got to restock, like I said again. So I'm gonna need some more cold brew, and Steph got to try the product too, man. So I'm
Nah,
gonna leave the floor is yours.
I got y'all, man.